Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of Council, Wednesday the 29th of April 2026, held here in the Council chambers of Manjimup, commencing at 5:30. Kaya Nala Karak Nunga Mort Kan Karak Ninja Buja. We acknowledge the traditional custodians and the lands in which we meet. I would also like to acknowledge former Councillor Ventress, who has joined us for this evening. Good evening, Councillor Ventress. Item 2, announcements by the President. I would just like to firstly acknowledge the passing of Mr. Dunnett and Mr. Bennett. Two gentlemen within our community, and as part of the council, I would like to extend our sincere condolences to both of the gentlemen's families. I'd also like to acknowledge the amazing services that were put on Anzac Day and how well our communities throughout the entire Shire came together to acknowledge the service of our veterans. I attended Manjimup dawn and 11 o'clock service. It was incredibly well attended, and the new RSL of Manjimup President, Joel, is doing a fantastic job, and I would fully commend him for the service this year. Also acknowledge Walpole, Pemberton and Northcliffe's services as well. We attended the opening of the Yarning Circle at the Heritage Park. It was an incredible display of culture by the Indigenous community. Would definitely encourage everyone to go down and have a look at the Yarning Circle. It is the entire community come together in making the little tiles, and it is an absolute credit to everyone that was involved in bringing that together. One other thing that I would like to just touch on as part of these announcements is the kindness that is displayed and the respect that we call for on social media. The people sitting around this table are dedicated to their community. They sit around this table because that's what they are called to do. They want to make sure that our communities are fair and transparent and that our entire Shire is looked after. I would ask that all social media just acknowledges the contribution that all of our volunteers make, and just call for a little bit of kindness when the comments are made, whether you're anonymous or your name is to it. Attendance, apologies, we have none. Approved leave of absence, we have Councillor Heidi Tempera has been granted leave of absence for this meeting. Number 4, declarations of interest.
Madam President, I don't have any at this stage.
Thank you. Section 5, public question time. 5.1, response to public questions taken on notice, there are nil. 5.2 is public question time. Under meeting procedure determined by the Shire of Manjimup Standing Orders Local Law 2013, this is the only opportunity for members of the public to ask up to a maximum of 2 questions of council. There is no further opportunity to question the Shire of Manjimup during the meeting. Questions can be asked on any Shire matter, not just on issues included in the meeting agenda, and each person should have up to 3 minutes to ask their questions, which may be extended by an additional 3 minutes where considered appropriate by the presiding member. Persons asking questions are entitled to response unless the question is declared out of order by the presiding member. If a matter requires further investigation, that response may be in writing. Any person asking questions of council must state their correct name and locality, as this will form part of the public record of this meeting. We would also like you to please note this meeting is being live streamed on the Shire's YouTube channel. Following this meeting, a recording will remain available on the channel and will also be uploaded onto the Shire's website. Are there any questions? Statements, songs, jokes from the gallery, Councillor. Thank you. Any questions? We're good? Excellent. Okay, presentation 6.1, Petitions, there are nil. 6.2, presentations, there are nil. 6.3, deputations. We have 3 tonight. 6.3.1, Mr. Rasputin, would you like to come and present to council? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, councillors. Hello, the mic's working today. Alan Rasmussen, 57 Rose Street, Manjimup. And I'm here. I also represent Anglicare Western Australia and myself. Madam President and councillors, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address council today and for the time and consideration you give to the matters affecting our community. I would like to begin by acknowledging the complexity of local government. Decision making and councils have to go through what you're required to balance financial sustainability, legislative obligations, the well-being of your ratepayers, often under significant constraint. I recognise that these decisions are not easy, and myself and Anglicare do not underestimate that responsibility. I appear before you today in support of the motion placed before Council on the 25th of March 2026 by Councillor De Campo, and to again express support for the 75-25% rate assistance proposal that was presented by myself on November 2025. I speak today as a financial counsellor representing what is being seen on the ground in real households rather than abstract economic modelling. What I bring before council is lived experience. The Financial Counsellors Association of Australia, we've articulated 10 principles of good financial hardship practice. These principles guide hardship responses across Australia, and they're founded on fairness, dignity, proportionality and recovery. When I addressed council in November last year, I stated that 26 was shaping up to be one of the most challenging years communities would experience in generations. Unfortunately, that assessment has proven accurate, and none of us take any pride in that, I can tell you. We've seen back-to-back interest rate rises, the Reserve Bank lifting the cash rate to 4.1%. However, households don't borrow at the cash rate. The average variable mortgage rate currently paid by households is about 6.5%. In some cases it's 7%, some cases it's 7.5%. In some cases it is a lot higher. So on a $600,000 mortgage over 30 years at 6.5%, your rate is $3,790 a month. That's what you're going to pay. Every time the rate goes up by 0.25%, that's $100 a month on the mortgage. That's $1,200 a year. This year we're going to look at three rate rises. Right? They're going to look at $3,600. Where's the money coming from? It's not coming out of their wages. But today, alongside mortgage pressures, households are absorbing substantial increases in core living expenses. In fact, core living expenses are now a luxury. I was walking through, I think it was Coles. A jar of coffee was $15. That to me is not a core living expense. That's a luxury. And the people that are on pensions and whatever, you can kiss it goodbye. Utility bills. Many households have risen by several $100s per year. They place additional strain, particularly on families and older residents on fixed incomes. Pensioners, people on job seeker and disability support pensions. Okay, that type of thing. Fuel costs, I don't have to tell you what's happening there, do I? No, they remain volatile with regional households often facing higher prices and increased travel distances, adding hundreds of dollars per year to household transport costs. And especially in regional areas like we've got here, where you know the public transport is practically non-existent. Grocery prices, they continue to rise with even modest weekly increases. That translates into $1,000 or more per year. Yeah, for an average household. When I used to do a budget for someone, we'd be saying 350, 400, family of three. Now it's 500. Insurance premiums, home, motor, health insurance. The list goes on. In some some areas they double digited. Out-of-pocket health costs, medication expenses continue to rise, disproportionately affecting people with chronic conditions. Inflation is expected to rise again in the coming quarter, with relief not anticipated until well into 2027. I wrote this 2 weeks ago. It's now gone out to 2028-29. In financial counselling, we're seeing hardship become more entrenched. Rates are rarely the first bill to fall behind. They're usually the final one. They're tipping households from stress into crisis. From crisis, you go into trauma. On the last deputation, if you read the article that I wrote, have a look at what trauma does. The 75-25% rate assistance proposal that represents a measured and responsible response. It supports recovery rather than prolonging hardship. While the 50-50 proposal would provide some relief, but don't get me wrong on this, right? It would be very, very welcome, right? But it would still leave many households struggling in the short term. And if you wanted me to go into what's currently happening with a rate of someone on a pension with a $1,500 rate bill, 50% off, $750 to pay. As one of my clients said to me, where am I going to find the $750? And we're going back to dog food again. So that's what we're looking at. Now, look, local government, you people are the closest to the people it serves. And when hardship's visible and increasing, your response matters. In closing this submission, it's not about assigning blame. It's about recognising hardship, supporting dignity, stability, community resilience. In partnership with the Financial Counsellors Association of Western Australia and the offices of qualified financial counsellors that are accredited and licensed under ASIC. I can't practice unless I'm licensed under ASIC. I would urge the Council direct the rates and finance departments work closely with the financial counselling profession to reduce the impact of hardship and vulnerability on ratepayers. Finally, I refer to the Ombudsman's Good Practice Guide. And this is section 12, page 24. And that comes out of the WA Local Government Ombudsman. So he recognises us. I suppose the question to be asked is, do you? So, for ratepayer, and I quote, for ratepayers in situations of vulnerability, local government should negotiate a flexible alternative payment arrangement that reflects their actual capacity to pay. In implementing this guidance, local government staff could consider the following during the decision-making process: the likelihood that the ratepayer may have other debts, the likely impact of the proposed payment arrangement on basic living needs of the ratepayer and any dependents. Now that's kids. The ratepayer's eligibility for any concessions or rebates the availability, costs and benefits of rate smoothing options, including centre pay, and any advice received from an independent financial counsellor. And that's what Anglicare are. That's what I am. So in that, I close the deputation, Madam President, and to councillors, and I thank you for your time and your consideration in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You could not have got that closer to 10 minutes if you had tried, Alan. Well done.
I've got more to come.
Thank you. We have 2 written deputations. Yeah, John.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a written deputation from Rebecca and Simon Hutton in relation to agenda item 6.3.2. It's under agenda 6.3.2. It relates to item 9.5.6, a proposed change of use to a dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at Latham Avenue in Walpole. And I'll read this verbatim. To the Manjimup Shire councillors, we understand there has been some local opposition submitted regarding our development proposal to change our property at 137, bracket 60, Latham Avenue to unhosted short-term rental accommodation. We've owned this property for 16 years, and for the first 8 of these years we rented our property to a local person. During this time, we continued to spend each January school holiday camping with our young family at Coal Mine Beach Caravan Park. We've holidayed there since 2004, recreating outdoors and supporting the local businesses for all of our supplies. In 2018, we took back the property to utilise as our holiday home, which we have shared with many of our family members. Over the last 8 years, we've undergone several renovations of the property, always using local trades when necessary, but many we have carried out ourselves, always sourcing our supplies from the local hardware store. Our property is our holiday home until such time that we retire and move to Walpole permanently. It will not be made available to the long-term local rental market again. But because we currently live busy lives operating our own business in Merredin and throughout the central eastern wheat belt, we've not been able to get to Walpole as often as we like. Given this, we thought it prudent to offer our property to the expanding holiday short-term accommodation market to be utilised by the growing tourist traffic that the region is experiencing. Our property, as well as other Airbnb type listings, offer visiting families a secure, affordable and homely basis to explore Walpole and surrounds, where they can bring their bikes and boats and have them securely located on site within eyesight. All whilst supporting local businesses and tourism in the area. Our property has a unique retro theme and we think will be an attraction in itself. We understand the argument to have the availability of local rental housing to attract workers to town as we live in a regional community and own a business ourselves. We personally believe that the alleviation of this current circumstance will be found only by increasing total supply of housing stock and not by excessively governing current stock and utilisation. We've spoken to our closest neighbours at 58 Latham Avenue and we have their verbal support for this development proposal. Thank you for your consideration. Yours sincerely, Rebecca and Simon Hutton. This is a deputation from J. Druce and reads as follows. I'm unable to attend this meeting in person. Can my opposition to the following applications be read out at the meeting, please? Three items. Opposition in relation to the proposed change of use of a dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at lot 225, brackets 55 Park Avenue, Walpole. Opposition to a second proposal. Proposed change of use to a dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at lot 74, bracket 36 Latham Avenue, Walpole. And similarly for a proposed change of use of a dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at 137, bracket 60 Latham Avenue, Walpole. I was contacted on the 23rd of April 2026 by a representative from Burton Realty. Burton Realty's representative stated that Burton Realty's intent is to cease providing management/hosting services for unhosted short-term rental accommodation in the imminent future. All three applicants for a proposed change of use of a dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation have stated in their management plans that Burton Realty will be their management agent. Due to Burton Realty's intent to cease providing management or hosting services for unhosted short-term rental accommodation in the imminent future, these applications will be unable to meet the conditions and purpose of Local Planning Policy 6.1.5, unhosted short-term rental accommodation. Kind regards, J. Druce.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. 6.4, delegate reports, there are nil. 6.5, conference reports, there are nil. Item 7, confirmation of the previous minutes. Councillor Dern.
I'll move as per the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Mylan. Can we put that to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Is carried 7-0. Thank you. Item 8, motions of which previous notice has been given. 8.1, notice of motion, Councillor De Campo, planning approval of the plantation, a pine plantation. Can you just give me a minute? Okay, just, so would someone like to, so this item has been withdrawn. Would someone like to move that council note the notice of motion dated the 25th of March 2026 for planning approval for the plantation has been withdrawn by Councillor De Campo. Councillor De Campo.
Notice of motion, Madam President.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Burns.
Would be interesting if there wasn't.
It would be interesting if there wasn't. I'm not really sure what we do. Can we put that to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Carried 7-0. Thank you. 8.2, notice of motion, Councillor De Campo. Adoption in principle of hardship rate relief proposal presented on the 16th of December 2025.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move with some changes to clarify the intent of the motion, actually, Madam President. So I will read the recommendation. It is that 1, Council notes the hardship rate relief proposal presented by Mr Alan Rasmussen on the 16th of December 2025. 2, endorses in principle a rate relief framework based on the 75-25 model outlined in that proposal for the purpose of assisting ratepayers experiencing verified financial hardship. 3, requires that any application for relief be supported by an independent financial assessment undertaken by a suitably qualified and registered financial counsellor to ensure fairness, consistency and accountability. 4, notes that the proposed relief is intended to apply within a financial year. That's very important. And to be available only once to eligible applicants. 5, which is a new point, no rates in arrears other than within the financial year applied within can be included in any rate relief proposal. 6, requires the eligibility criteria for the scheme to be clearly defined and that it is only available to individual homeowners. Remove point 6 completely, and I'll explain that if somebody seconds it. And point 7, requests that a report be presented back to Council at the next meeting or as soon as practicable prior to the 2026-27 budget deliberations for implementation in the 26-27 financial year of the proposal.
Thank you, councillor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Burns.
Madam President, if you don't mind, if I have an amendment, when would I be able to?
When I get off my feet.
When you're finished? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I just seek to clarify the motion because there was some conjecture around whether rates in arrears previous to that financial year was going to be included. So somebody who may potentially have 5 years of rates that are on payments plans, they can't be included. This is a one-off rate relief proposal for people who are the most vulnerable in our community. And in fact, when this proposal came through, I do recall Mr Rasmussen telling us there was 4 on that list at that time, and now there is, I believe, only 2, but that is old information now, given information is old within 24 hours, so that there may be more. So we're talking about a very few very few customers that will actually take this up. And the reality is that they have to go through a financial planner, a registered financial planner. They have to show financial hardship through a templated process. So not anyone could just come in and say, we'd like to have our rates reduced 75%, thank you very much. And then there is, of course, the fact that if they don't contribute to 25%, they get charged the full amount. The reason for taking point 6 out, well, first of all, the reason for adding a new point 5 is just to clarify that it isn't in relation to people who owe rates for 5 years. Now, if we've got people owing rates for 5 years, by the way, that is a problem, I've got to say. That is a problem that we need to deal with as a chamber and somehow communicate that there are other options out there for people to be able to take. Point 5 is about clarifying, and there are 14 people right now currently on interest-free rate payments with the council. Strangely enough, our instalment program is also interest-free, so I'm not really sure, although I think that does have some charges in relation to administration, very minor charges in relation to administration, but the interest-free payment program doesn't have those charges as far as I'm aware. A couple of $100, I think. So more people are taking that up for the very reasons Mr. Rasmussen just said. I mean, it is tougher to find all of that money in one hit. Let's not forget, people that take, some have said in private discussions about this, you know, we already have vehicles people can use. Let's not forget somebody that takes an interest-free, and I'm not sure that they have to actually show true and genuine financial hardship to get an interest-free payment scheme. You certainly don't when you do an instalment program, and who wouldn't do an instalment program? Those 14 people might be going on overseas trips. They may not actually have true financial hardship. These people do, and they have to prove it. So I'd just ask you to take that into consideration. Point 6 really was to appease the crowd here, actually, that we go away and we do a big report. The reality is we have 2 houses that are potentially on minimums at $1,500 odd, round figures, that we're going to give a 75% rate relief on. So we're talking about a couple of grand a year. So for staff to go away and try to assess the financial impact of the proposal in the Shire, based on 2 actual applicants right now, or the practical mechanisms required to implement the proposal. Well, the practical mechanisms is you come in with your application. There might be a form you fill out. I don't know, there's lots of forms. We've got lots of forms nowadays. There's lots of forms. You'll have a form you fill in. You'll have Mr. Rasmussen, or it could be Dean Babbage, who was a player in this room at one stage. I better not use the word player, I suppose. He was a participant as a counsellor in this room. I mean, he's a registered financial counsellor. It doesn't mean it's just Anglicare. Could be anyone, although he's not in the field of residence, but he could do it. They'll fill the form out. They'll come in. Staff will assess it. I'm guessing this is giving staff, although maybe should be more clear on that, delegated authority, to then go and give or set up this plan, similar to the policy we have, which allows for interest-free payments on rates. I'm guessing that's over a period of time. The recommended eligibility criteria and administrative controls for the scheme, well, I mean, it's pretty clear that it has to be a templated financial hardship eligibility, and it has to be by a financial advisor, as we've heard already. And then options to reduce the administrative and financial burden. Well, that's what I'm doing by taking it out, actually, because I don't want somebody spending a week doing a report costing us 10 grand to save 2 grand a year. More broadly, though, we do have structures available for people if they can't pay their rates on time. But we don't have structures for people that can't pay their rates at all. And we're talking about homeowners who are maybe teetering on the edge of losing their home, not feeding their children, or not being able to put tyres in their car or any of that sort of thing. Now, clearly, I don't think the 14 people that are on interest-free payment schemes are going to go to the extent of going to a financial advisor, give them all of their details, have all of that out on the table to be deemed to have severe financial stress to be able to get 75% off their rates. They're just going to pay their rates because they are. So I think this is a really good thing to do. I'm not sure that it happens anywhere else in the state. I hope it doesn't. I hope we're the first. I hope Steve doesn't mess it up with his amendments. But I'm sure he won't. Very smart man. He's a very smart man, Steve. So I think that it'll show that we have compassion in times of real desperation. You know, fuel has come down. Mr. Rasmussen is right. I can tell you from somebody who puts the liquid gold in the vehicle every day, it's come down significantly. But it might go up again, and it might hit $3 and it might hit $4. A jar of coffee I thought was actually $32. I paid $15 at IGA and Pemberton the other day, but generally they're $32. So if you're getting it for $25 or $15, that's pretty good. There is genuine pain out there. That's the key. And I don't think any of us here, I certainly can't. Well, I can. Actually, 12 months ago I can. I understand when you don't know where your next dollar's coming from. And I understand when you get that big bill in the mail, how you're going to actually deal with that. We have a mechanism now. We may have a mechanism that we can deal with that. We have other mechanisms for people who have the ability to pay. But this just gives people a little leg up. And I think it's the compassionate thing to do. I urge you to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burns, did you want to speak as a seconder amendment?
Please move my amendment. Thanks. Madam President, it's as I wrote this amendment. Do I need to read it out? Okay. Okay, you have a copy in front of you, but as Councillor De Campo has already changed his, there are some things on this that I sort of suspect might be could be removed as well. Anyway, my amendment, if you look at the bit of photocopy paper you've got, is notes the hardship rate relief proposal presented by Mr Alan Rasmussen on 16th of December 2025, including the proposal to write off 25% of rates in arrears under special circumstances. Point 2, notes that any application for relief be supported by an independent financial assessment undertaken by a suitably qualified and registered financial counsellor to ensure fairness, consistency and accountability. Point 3, notes that the relief is intended to apply within a financial year and be available once only to applicants. Point 4, requires the eligibility criteria to be clearly defined and available to individual homeowners. 5, directs the Chief Executive Officer to undertake a feasibility and implementation assessment of the proposal, including the financial impact on the Shire, including the estimated number of ratepayers who would be eligible, the practical mechanisms required to implement the proposal, the recommended eligibility criteria and administrative controls of the scheme, options to reduce the administrative and financial burden on the Shire, the changes required, this is a new one, it's different to what Councillor De Campo had, the changes required to policy 4.1.4, financial hardship rate relief, which is attached to this item, and point 6, request that a report be presented to Council at the next meeting or as soon as practicable prior to the 26-27 budget deliberations with findings and policy recommendations for Council's consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Is it changes are?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Do you want to cover that?
Yeah, do I need a seconder or anything? No.
We'll just establish what the changes are,
Oh,
then we'll ask for
sorry,
a second.
just the changes. The changes are, instead of point 2, endorses in principle a rate relief proposal. This is the standard changes really. Yeah. It says notes. It removes the endorses in principle, and it notes that because that's the main thing. Endorses it in principle, but just mainly notes what we've got here. Yep. The other thing is to ensure that we amend our policy. That's down at point 45E, that we amend our policy because we do currently have a policy there. And question 6 relates to reporting back to the impacts on our policy and recommendations based on an assessment of what these changes would mean. Is that clear, Councillor Darren? Sorry.
So that your amendment, so Councillor De Campo's
Councillor Darren, can you use your mic?
Sorry, Councillor De Campo's motion removed point 6. So Councillor Mylan amendment adds point 6 back in.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It does, because without that, you can't really do the last point.
Can I have the whole thing read in its entirety again? Because it was confusion between 3 and 4, so 3 became something else.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Have we got another
My
copy?
I could look at your one.
Well,
Oh, well, no, that
yeah,
looks
I've
quite,
written
no,
all over
that's,
it now.
no, that's confusing. Sorry, I need it read in its entirety again, I'm sorry. Not number one, obviously, because that's the same, isn't it?
Okay. Point 2 is notes that any application for relief be supported by an independent financial assessment undertaken by a suitably qualified and registered financial counsellor to ensure fairness, consistency and accountability. Is that okay? And then point 3, 4 and 5 are the same?
So point 2 is completely different, yeah?
Yep.
Point 3 is taken out. You don't require them to.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
So that
yeah.
becomes
That's point 2.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
point 2 is basically out.
So point 2, you don't note. You're not noting it.
Yeah.
You're just taking it out.
Yeah.
Right, okay,
Remove point 2.
But it's addressed in point 1.
Yeah.
yeah, it does substantially change the motion. Okay, let's just debate.
No,
Done.
no, no. Is there a seconder? Councillor Burns, thank you. Councillor Mylan?
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Madam President, I probably made a bit of a mess of it,
Go
but
ahead,
I
keep
was
going.
dealing with changes on changes and tried to get this out. Look, let me say that Mr Rasmussen's talk to us today and also the last time you came is actually real. I am very concerned about the cost of living crisis and the circumstances that many people find themselves in trying to come up with rates money. So from that point of view, I see that our Shire really needs to take some strong steps. We do have a policy that, as Mr Rasmussen outlined, that does offer some rates relief, including a removal of interest and including going on to a negotiated payment plan. So why I sort of moved this amendment is because if we endorse this, we're saying straight away, before we do the evaluation of the likely impact, that we're going to go ahead with it. It's just a bit of the cart before the horse, I suppose. By endorsing the 75-25 model, and then, now I know Councillor De Campo's now removed those conditions, I think we need to really do an assessment of what the likely impact is on how many people we will be impacted by this. I know people are saying 2 or 3, but I suspect that it may be many more people who are under hardship. And once we advertise straight away now, if we endorse this in principle, that we are offering a 75% rate reduction for 1 year of your rates, which is probably about $800. You can only do it once, I understand that, which is slightly is a significant change to what Mr Rasmussen actually requested originally, which was to do a 75% write-off of all of their rates in arrears. This is just for 1 year, so it's probably someone on minimum rates is about, I guess, $850 one-off payment. So if someone goes into arrears and then is deemed by a financial counsellor to be in hardship, which I think there'd be many people. Now, I don't know whether, as Councillor De Campo suggested, that no one will bother to go to the trouble of asking for Mr Rasmussen's or another financial advisor's assistance or not. I need to get some kind of sense of it. I suspect that there would be many people that would fit into this category. So I think we need to do an assessment first, figure out, what's the likely policy, what's the likely implication, make an amendment to our policy, which, if you read it, is very generous. And I have spoken to another financial counsellor who has worked with the Manjimup Shire and said that the way that the Manjimup Shire works with people with their rates relief has been very supportive and quite generous in the sense of the payment plans that exist. So there are those people that will be these people. I think what we should probably do is advertise our current policy, but also we need to look at the implications to this, amend our policy, and then announce that we're going to do it, rather than announce today we're doing this. I don't think just because you're the first council in Australia or WA to do something is a reason to do it. It might be a nice to do, but it would certainly make an impact out there, and we would need to know where we're really going to go with this, I think, before we jump in and offer a 75% rates cut, effectively, on 1 year of your rates in arrears. To qualify for it, you need to be in arrears. I'm just a bit concerned about how that works and whether or not we need to do the evaluation, do a bit of an assessment of it before we jump into it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bones?
When Councillor Marlin first proposed that he was putting forward some amendments, I questioned the need, to be honest. The proposal as it was put originally, I thought essentially covered it. But you've raised some really good points. You know, we talk about the cost of living crisis, and it seems to be a phrase that's been bandied about for quite a long time now. I don't think it's a crisis anymore, it's just the new norm. And there's some things like fuel that go up and down, but most things only go in one direction. They go up, and they tend to go up faster than wages. And for those in a fixed income, like pensioners, it goes up a lot faster than their fixed income. So as much as this is something that only affects a very small number of households within the Shire at this point, 2 perhaps, next year that could be 10. The year after it could be 20. So I think taking a moment just to give the officers an opportunity to look into this a little bit deeper and provide some advice and some guidance as to the possible financial implications moving forward is not necessarily such a bad thing. If it delays it for a month to equip us with a little bit more information, I think that's a fair trade.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any speakers against? Councillor De Campo.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, what a way to botch a motion. I'm not sure how we ask council staff to do a report on something we don't know. How do you ask them to go out and assess something that isn't out there? There are currently 2 people with verified financial hardship right now with Anglicare. That's the only thing we can do the assessment on. So how do you go out and say, well, it might be 10 next year, it might be 20, it might be 100, by the way. But we can review the policy and we can review what we do next year in relation to numbers if they explode. The reality is it's not only available to people in arrears. That's a wordplay. It's available to anyone that gets their rate notice straight away next year and says, I can't pay this, I'm going to go in without being in arrears. So I'm not sure where the word arrears comes because it's not in the original motion. However, to ask staff to go out and spend time, valuable time, and the other point to the amendment is we constantly say we want to unshackle, we want to get rid of green and red tape, and then we go and ask staff to try and write a report on a hypothetical. And that's all it is. You might as well get AI to do it. Andy. The reality is you can't write that report. You don't know who in the future will be under severe financial stress. That is the actual reality of writing that report. And that's why I took it out. It is a waste of our staff's time, valuable time that we consistently hear in this room that they don't have enough of. Right now we're talking about 2 cases of verified financial hardship. Verified financial hardship that we can assess and build a report on to bring back to council. Just remember, anything we do in this room today, we can undo at the next meeting, we can undo at the meeting after, we can undo next year. So just when you look to burden further our staff with administrative responsibilities on things that they can't even write a report on that have credibility, because we don't know in the future how many will be applying for this scheme if it's passed, take that into consideration with the amendment. I think the initial, I'm not sure Councillor Moylan seems to like to always change my notices of motion, so maybe I should run them by him before I bring them in. However,
Good idea.
well, I don't know.
What's the best one you've
I don't know.
Continue,
But
thank you.
the reality is that we can change the scheme if we would want to. I think it's a good scheme. I think the amendment, all it does is burden staff with a report that they can't really write because you're writing it hypothetically. I mean, if inflation goes to 8%, will that correlate 4 people being under verified financial hardship? If it goes to 10%, will that be 10 people under verified financial hardship? It's really about running a template, probably through AI actually, and saying, well, this is what it'll be if this is what it is. We can do that really easily. We don't need staff to write a report. I think this is just something we get out of the way, we allow it to happen, see how it goes, and then we adjust in the future if we need to. And I can't understand why we want to burden our staff further trying to write a report that we even all concede that we don't know how many next year will be applying for the scheme, whether it's the interest-free scheme, the payment instalment scheme, or potentially the 75-25 scheme. The wording that in the original motion, by the way, is far clearer than the amendment in relation to endorse. I don't have a problem endorsing. We're in this room to endorse, by the way. We're not in this room to be touchy-feely and say, let's send it back to the staff and let them endorse it to us so that we don't actually have to make the decision. We're here to endorse stuff, by the way. But it is very clear in here. It's a model based around 75-25. It's based around verified financial hardship. It's based around 1 year only, and it's based around the fact you can't have your arrears done. I urge you to vote the amendment down.
Are there any speakers for the amendment? Question?
The question to the CEO through the chair.
Thank you.
Point 6 seems to be something that most of these points are, regardless of whether we do them before or after, we are going to have to come up with practical mechanisms required to implement the proposal. We're going to have to come up with the eligibility criteria. One way or another, it's going to have to be done either before we say go ahead and do it, or you bring it back and then we say go ahead and do it maybe. Do you see any significant risks in doing it one way or the other, or is it 6 of one, half a dozen of the other?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councillor Darren. I might lean on our Director of Business, who's probably a little bit closer to the operations on how this would roll out, to maybe help me with that one while I have a think about it as well.
Through the chair, I believe that the mechanisms are fairly obvious in that, in essence, advice has been received from financial counsellors that those particular ratepayers are eligible, we can come up with those mechanisms. I don't think that's a big issue.
Are there any other speakers? Okay, I'm going to speak for the amendment. I do believe 2 years ago, as part of our rates discussion, we did implement the interest-free payments through the financial hardship policy. These payments allowed for smaller chunks to come out, smaller payments to come out, stretched through the entire year. And it was encouraged at the time for people to take this up. We had 14 people take that up in a year. I think this is an indicator of what is going on within our community, and I endorse what Councillor Byrne says. This is the new norm. People are in arrears. By giving a 75% reduction in 1 year, are we just setting people up for failure the following year? Are we just putting a Band-Aid on it for 1 year? Or should we be part of the prevention rather than the cure? So the Shire has recognised the hardship that is within our community. We have brought together a flexible alternative payment arrangement. The verified financial hardships are the 14 people that have already signed up to the interest-free payments. The implications throughout the entire Shire of the burden that would be put onto the rest of the ratepayers for us to maintain the services that we do, knowing that our rates are only a quarter of the income that we have into our Shire, what are we going to give up? And I know at the moment there is only 2 people, but as Councillor Mylan has brought up, we don't know what the implications of this are. So I don't think having the report brought to us before we make this decision is such a bad thing. We need to make informed decisions about the economic sustainability of our Shire. That is what our job is. So to have that information, to note that what is being requested of us is absolutely important and it is absolutely essential. But to note what the implications of that are to us as an organisation is also essential, because we're here to look after the 10,000 people in our Shire and make sure there's equity through the 10,000 people in our Shire. So I would encourage you to support this amendment. Councillor Mylan, would you like to... Are there any other speakers?
Chair, I've got a
Question?
question.
I just want to clarify. There's going to be lots of questions. So the amendment says basically go away, and so we're noting it all. We are going to have a report written. It is going to come back, and we're at that point we're going to decide whether or not to implement, or we're deciding to implement, but we want a report to come back on council on how to implement it. I'm just trying to work out exactly what we're deciding here.
Do you want to have a crack at that?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councillor Darren, for the question. My interpretation of Councillor Mylan's proposal is that it gives some direction to staff in terms of a proposed approach for this hardship matter, for us to go away and research, model the potential implications, and noting Councillor De Campo's comments that we may not be able to rely on hard data here. It might be a little bit speculative, but we could model different scenarios. Is it 2 people? Is it 10 people? Is it a certain percentage of the rate assessments? We can work out that modelling, present that to council, and then present it back in a report so that council can make an informed decision based on, you know, some speculative modelling. That's my interpretation of Councillor Mylan's motion. And if I've got that wrong, I probably need to know now.
So
Happy
we'll
with
come
that?
back and we will decide on the policy when it comes back. Sorry.
Final question. In comparison to the original motion, which would be to just go ahead and implement it now.
Happy with that? Excellent, thank you. Councillor Mylan, would you like to close?
Thanks very much, and thanks everyone for trying to clarify my attempted amendment. Yeah, you did explain it correctly. I mean, I guess it was always about a bit of a matter of the process, and just make sure we know where we're going as best we can. As Councillor De Campo said, we don't really know. We're talking about 2, it's only 2, and then we say we don't really know. And we don't really know, but we need to get a bit of a sense of it. And I do think that if we say it'll create its own little wave anyway, which may be good or it may be bad. So I think it's about the process of, let's think about this, let's model what's going to happen, let's get a bit of a report, let's think about what the changes to our current policy are, how does it mesh with our current policy, you know, we're talking about the same people, the different cohort, let's get some research on that type of thing. So that's my main reason. I mean, there is confusion about this, and that's another reason to go away and think about it. The confusion is, the original proposal is about rates in arrears. And I think Councillor De Campo said that it wasn't about rates in arrears. My understanding when I read Mr Rasmussen's thing was that it was about, it's writing out 75% of the rates in arrears. So we need that's an example of the confusion around it. So I think we just need to take a step, examine it, and then come back and consider the implications. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, can we put that to the vote, please?
No, I'd like to speak to the amended motion.
We've closed.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
I apologise.
We're going to vote on the amended motion, please. All those in favour? And against? Is carried 5-2, which now makes it the substantive motion. Who would like to speak on the substantive motion? Is that right? Yep. Excellent.
Thank you, Madam President. I
Councillor
speak
Gallo.
against the substantive motion.
Thank you.
What's very interesting in this room, we use facts and figures when we like, and I'm probably guilty of it as well. We talk about two people at $800. I didn't choose that figure, by the way. Councillor Moylan did. The reality is our last lunch cost $350. So I think if we want to have a really good look at 25% of our rates and how we spend them, tonight's meal will cost $350. We bought a tonne of gypsum for our ovals for $4,500. I can buy 50 tonne from Lancelin for that. So if we really want to have a look at how we spend our ratepayer money, I don't think it's about helping the most vulnerable in our community. It's about having a really good look at how we spend that 25% of our ratepayers' money on various things that we do. At the last meeting, we in fact decided not to go to Canberra, and there's some councils that have been roundly criticised for going to Canberra in the last fortnight, taking 9 of their councillors, the mayor, the CEO and everyone all and sundry. But we didn't do that because we showed restraint. This is about protecting the most vulnerable in our community now. And I cannot believe that we've fallen back to, well, we have a payment plan, it's interest-free. You can go and do that. They can't pay the bill. Mr Rasmussen has people that cannot pay the bill right now. And we're lashing out on $350 lunches and most likely more expensive dinners. Well, maybe a notice of motion of policy around meals might be coming up to save 20% or 25% of our ratepayers' money if it's that important tonight. Because we're not considering the most vulnerable people in our community. We're asking an officer to go and do a report based on hypotheticals, and I don't believe that that's good government. And I'll put my sword to the cloth when I don't believe it is. So I urge you to vote it down. Let's just not do it. Let's leave the system that the President says is suitable and applicable right now. Let's just leave that system there. The most vulnerable will just have to work it out, how they pay an interest-free payment scheme. That's what they'll have to do. I urge you to vote the motion down.
Are there any other speakers?
No, it's not my motion.
No. It's Steve's. We're back on the substantive.
Okay, well, maybe.
Nice. Alrighty. Speaker to move. So we read or summarise the motion. Do we have to read that again? I don't think we need to read it again. I think everyone's clear. Sorry?
Oh, no, it's all right.
So we're going to put the substantive motion to the vote.
Which is the amended one?
Yes, which is the amended motion, which became the substantive motion. Okay, putting that to the vote. All those in favour? And against? Carried 6-1. Thank you. Okay. 8.3, notice of motion which was put forward by Councillor Tempera at the last meeting. Councillor Tempera has requested via email that this notice of motion be presented to the June ordinary council meeting. So that will be presented at the June council meeting. Item 9, officers' reports. Office of the CEO. So we will... I haven't got my thing. So within the interest of the gallery, we will go through these. Any that have been taken out will be put onto the whiteboard. The ones that are on the whiteboard are the ones that we will debate going forward. The ones that are not on the whiteboard will be considered carried on block. Office of the CEO, 9.1.1, the 26-27 budget directions document. 9.1.2, proposed development of compliance policy. Corporate and governance. 9.2.1, request to write off the 25-26 rates and emergency service levy for Forest Products Commission. 9.2.2, minutes of the Warren Blackwood Alliance Council's meeting held on the 10th of February 2026. 9.2.3, request for authorisation to attend ordinary council meetings via electronic means. Councillor Tempera? It's taken out. 9.2.4, consideration of proposal for the Shire of Manjimup to manage the Northcliffe Timber Cluster. Finance and Administration, 9.3.1, monthly statement of financial activity, February 2026. 9.3.2, Shire financial payments, February 2026. Statutory planning, 9.5.1 has been withdrawn. 9.5.2, proposed 10, in brackets 10, lot residential subdivision at lot 32, in brackets 55, Ellis Street, Pemberton. 9.5.2, Ellis Street, taken out. You're right. 9.5.3, proposed change use of dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at lot 225, in brackets 55, Park Avenue, Walpole. 9.5.4, proposed change of use of a dwelling to unhosted short-term residential rental accommodation at lot 74, in brackets 36, Latham Avenue, Walpole. 9.5.5, proposed change of use of a dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at lot 137, in brackets 60, Latham Avenue, Walpole. 9.5.6, delegated planning decisions, March 2026. 9.5.7, budget adjustment, site and contour survey of Windy Harbour Reserve is absolute and taken out. 9.5.8, second progress report on the advocacy actions for the remediation of the Pemberton Mill site. 9.9.1, approval to proceed with the preferred Pemberton Community Hub Ballet Courtyard concept. Works, 9.13.1, bridge number 8033, Southwestern Highway, the Timber Gantry, taken out. And advisory committees, 9.16.1, unconfirmed minutes of the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting held on the 26th of March 2026. Fabulous. Would someone like to move those? Councillor Betting. It's on the bottom of that thing.
That the council adopt the recommendations contained in the council officers and committee reports within section 9 of the agenda, with the exception of those on the board.
Good job. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mylan? Can we put that to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Is carried 7-0. 9.3.2, request for authorisation to attend the ordinary council meetings via electronic means by Councillor Tempera. Is there a mover? Councillor Burns. I'm glad someone moved it, seeing we pulled it out. Is there a seconder? Councillor Betting. Councillor Burns, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much. I think this is an interesting one. On one hand, it is 2026. I work from home, I'm self-employed, I hold meetings with people all over the state on a regular basis, and I do so successfully with a webcam and a microphone. But on the other hand, the position of being on council is not a part-time job. It's not. It's an honour. It's a responsibility. And does that responsibility end at the end of the council meeting? According to legislation and the requirements, attending the OCM is the one thing that we are absolutely required to do each month. But looking around the table at my fellow councillors, every single one of us is highly engaged in the community. Our job doesn't stop at the close of this meeting and then start again when we start reading for the next one. We need to be part of the community. And I don't know if this sets I don't know if this sets a precedent that we don't want to set, that it's okay, once you're on council, you can run the rest of your life and take job opportunities and whatnot, because you can just zoom in once a month, that's fine. Now, I've not known Councillor Tempera for long. I think she's going to be a fantastic asset to council, but in order to do so, I think she has to be here and be part of the community. I moved this motion because nobody else was going to, but also because I wanted to hear the debate. I know what I think, but I want to hear what my colleagues think. Thank you.
Is
Question?
Councillor Burns moving an amendment? Because he's speaking against the motion, but moved the motion to allow the meetings. I'm confused. It's local government. So are you seeking to move an amendment? No? Okay.
Seeing as I'm still standing, just to clarify my understanding, just because you move a motion, you don't necessarily have to vote in favour of it.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question then?
Question.
If it lays on the table, does that mean that, what does that mean in this case? Because that's what it would mean, is it lays on the table. Is that a correct pronunciation of what it would, if this is voted down? It doesn't mean we're refusing it if we don't approve it.
Correct, yeah, there's some subtleties there.
Yep.
If the motion is lost, there is essentially no decision of the council, and I will need to bring the agenda item back to council to have a decision. So the decision of council tonight, quite plainly, either needs to be approve it or don't approve it, or approve it with conditions, rather than let it fail, let the motion fail.
Councillor Batin.
Yeah, I think Andy has summed it up pretty well. I think when you take on this job, you have to consider all the things in your life that are going on. We all have businesses and families and things that happen, but I think to ask to not attend more than half of the meetings in 1 year is a bit much, really. And I think the rest of us have made a commitment. Also zooming it, we're supposed to be a team and work as a team, and I don't think we could have that team culture if you're not here. And the Shire meeting is just the minimum of the job. It's not the full job, so I think I'm not really in favour of this. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Batin.
Can I move an amendment to the motion, Madam President?
Thank you,
Well,
Councillor
it pains me to
Cameron.
do so.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
I move an amendment that we refuse the application. We change the word from approve to refuse with the other words following and... Pardon?
You have to
Foreshadow.
foreshadow an alternative, because if you move an amendment that substantially changes the intent of the thing, it's not an amendment.
You can foreshadow. Yep.
So I move an amendment.
Foreshadow the amendment.
No, I want to move an amendment to this motion. I can move an amendment.
An alternative.
No, I can move an amendment, just like he did. What's the problem?
We need to hear the amendment.
Yep.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'd now have to find let me give 2 seconds to...
Page 31.
Okay. This probably should have been done prior to the standing up. So the amendment would read that council... Apologies for this delay. No, don't confuse it, please. That council, 1, refuse Councillor Heidi Tempera's request to attend the following ordinary meetings of council by electronic means, specifically Microsoft Teams, those dates. 2, note the communications technology available at Pemberton may not be fit for purpose. And 3, direct the Chief Executive Officer to prepare a draft council policy on electronic attendance, etc., etc. That's the amendment I'd like to make to the motion.
Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's an alternative motion because it negates the intent of the recommendation, so it needs to be foreshadowed.
I'll foreshadow an alteration. Okay.
Thank you. Just saying. Are there any other speakers for the officer's recommendation or against the officer's recommendation? Nope. Can we put this to the vote, please? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Madam President. So, councillors, just for a bit of clarity, and for those in the gallery and those online watching, so if this motion, the officer recommendation, is lost, then the council will revert to Councillor De Campo's alternative motion, which was almost identical except changing the word refuse, approved to refuse.
Good. So we are voting on the officer's recommendation. Okay. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation? And against? Is lost 7-0. Foreshadowed alternative.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move. Foreshadowed alternative is to change the word approved to refuse and leave the rest of the officer's recommendation as per the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Burns, Councillor De Campo.
Thank you, although I was not going to do this because of some previous actions in the meeting. However, I think it has been summed up nicely. However, when you think about meetings on council, and you can get beat up in this room, clearly you get beat up on Facebook if you actually listen to Feesy's book. I don't listen to it and it doesn't bother me, but you can get beat up in the community. It's not about the meetings you attend though, it's about the meetings you're not attending when you're not physically in the area and that you can't do by Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever medium you'd like to try. Some of it is just purely medium in this room, like medium psychics. However, like budget meetings, like the pre-meetings where we have multiple discussions about what's going on in the community. It's about getting into the community. It's about going to the out-of-town meetings. It's about the committees that you've been put on. In fact, one committee Councillor Temper is on. I would like to have been that proxy and wasn't given that opportunity. I was in Queensland at the time. We all have time off council. That is not a problem. But the reality is to do it long distance, like Councillor Burns just argued in the previous motion, makes it very, very difficult. And people's lives change. We accept that. Staff come and go. In fact, one of our staff members is moving back to Narrogin, by the way. So that changes regularly. Councillors come and go. Councillor of Interest is in the room, still hasn't bought a brush, by the way. Nothing's changed there. Welcome back. Nice to see you in the room. And we have a councillor who's been absent since day one, basically. So the reality is people's lives change from the point that they commit to wanting to be a councillor. You just need to accept your life might have changed and have another tilt at another time. Previously, I've got thrown off council. No, I didn't run for council, actually. But I came back, reinvigorated, as you can see. As you can see, I'd love to be able to wear my hat in here, but I can't. Reinvigorated, as you can see.
Just keep it on track.
So there are particular circumstances that should allow, as Councillor Moylan knows, to be able to dial in via Microsoft Teams or Zoom or however you do it. But I think over a 12-month prolonged period, that's probably when you need to look in the mirror and say, should I resign from council? Because my career has gone on a different path or because my life has gone on a different path, and should I then allow somebody who is more committed or who wants to be involved in all of those other meetings that you can't be involved, to jump on and into that seat. So I think the vote's going to be what it's going to be anyway, but I commend the motion to you to refuse the application to dial in via Microsoft Teams for those particular meetings.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burns? Are there any other speakers? Yeah, good thing. Can we put that to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour of the alternative and against is carried 7-0. Thank you. Okay, 9.5.2, proposed 10-lot residential subdivision at lot 32 in brackets 55 Ellis Street, Pemberton. Councillor Darren.
I would like to move, as per the officer's recommendation, or I would like to move that the council adopt the officer's recommendation subject to the deletion of condition 8.
Thank you, councillor. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? Councillor Mylan, thank you very much. Councillor Darren, would you like to speak to
I
that?
was almost going to say, that's hardly the most contentious of tonight's ones.
It's one of those nights.
Look, this is a motion to recommend to WAPC that we are in support of a subdivision. My reasoning for removing condition 8 is that I do just think that, condition 8 says the plan of subdivision is to be modified so that no lot is greater than 800 square metres in area. See attachment. The reasoning for that condition was because there was a feeling that battle axe blocks wouldn't be appropriate and that there was an alternative option to put in a road and create more blocks. I think there's a couple of issues with that. One, the alternative is still there, and the proponent, if they like that alternative suggestion, which is a good suggestion, to create more blocks, they can still take that to WAPC and have that conversation and potentially put more in if they think it's viable. My concern with including it in there is that in theory, that subdivision with additional blocks might make sense. I don't necessarily think battle axe blocks are anything of a huge concern. We have battle axe blocks everywhere. It's not a big problem. There are people that will buy a 1,300 square metre block and not want to subdivide it further. They will just want a 1,300 square metre block. They might want multi-generational family living. They might want other options. They might just want a really big shed. So it's not a given that someone's going to buy that block and want to subdivide it into a battle axe. And even if they did, is that a big concern? My issue with the alternative is that it doesn't necessarily take into account the cost implications on the developer to do that. So to create those additional blocks, I know that it's easy to say that you get an extra 5 blocks and therefore you can make money out of an extra 5 pieces of land to sell. But to put in a road is going to be a substantial cost to that developer. There's going to be additional drainage that will be required for that road, additional utilities, additional surveying that will be needed to happen for an additional 5 blocks. There'll be extra fencing. There'll be additional utilities that are required. Those things may make it unviable financially for them to do that, and then we might miss out on any subdivision. I've certainly been on council long enough now to have seen multiple subdivisions come through these chambers, all of them supported by council. When it gets to the next stage, the cost implications of the overhead costs, or what do you call them? What are those?
Headworks.
Headwork costs is usually what stops people in their tracks from doing the next part. While I see the benefit of creating more blocks, and in an ideal world that would happen, if we are going to put something in place that's going to make those headworks more expensive, to then mean that the person who owns this land is better off just not developing any of it, then Pemberton misses out on 8 blocks. And I don't think that we're in the space right now of wanting to stop 8 additional blocks being built in Pemberton. So it's certainly not designed to say that that alternative couldn't be put up. I really encourage the proponent to do that. If they can create 13 blocks out of it, I think that's 13, then they go for it. But I do think we should leave it to the developer to determine whether or not that is financially viable for them, and let the business people that are actually going to be spending the money to do this, let them make those calls rather than us making those decisions here without having to understand the financial implications and the long-term implications of whether or not it gets done at all. So I encourage you to support the alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mylan?
I'd just really like just to endorse those comments. I mean, there's no guarantee just because we approve it as per the owner's suggestion right from the start, that they'll go ahead anyway. The headworks may still prove to be a barrier. So I think we need to just move those things out of the way and allow them to utilise the land. It fits with our scheme. So I endorse you, I encourage you to vote for.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I would also like to endorse what Councillor Darren has said. The amount of times that we get stopped in the street to say, why doesn't the Shire allow development within our Shire? And we do. But sometimes it is not our decisions that stop that. So being able to take away one of those provisions to encourage the development to go forward, I 100% endorse that as well. So would you like to close? You happy with that? Okay, councillors, can we put that to the vote, please? All those in favour? And carried 7-0. Thank you. 9.5.7 budget adjustment, site contour survey of Windy Harbour Reserve. Councillor Darren.
I'll move as per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Councillor De Campo? Councillor Darren?
I will briefly have a chat because the reason why this was deferred last time was partly because of me. But yeah, I would really commend the staff on the work they did to provide us with the additional information. Really, my biggest concern is that when you're going to go and spend money on consultant fees, nobody likes consultant reports sitting on a shelf. But I have full confidence when I am able to hear from a director say, I want to get things done and this is going to help me do that. That's what we want to know. That's what we want to hear. We're outcomes driven. This is about how do we achieve things, and if this is the mechanism we need to do that, then yes, I fully endorse that. So I encourage you to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor De Campo? All good? Are there any other speakers? Excellent. Can we put that to vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Is carried 7-0. Thank you. Okay. The item of much Facebook discussion. 9.13.1. I didn't even know we had that newspaper, but 9.13.1, bridge number 8033 Southwestern Highway, Timber Gantry, also known as the Arch. You certainly can.
And on a side note, I am a man of my word. I did get that front cover of the newspaper printed. Okay, this is, as I propose, the Council recognises the Manjimup Town Entrance Statement, known as the Arch, as a nationally significant asset, being the only over-road timber arch in Australia whose primary symbolism represents the timber industry and one of a small number of permanent over-road arches remaining in the country. 2. Notes that the arch is a primary hero image in the Shire's current tourism marketing and regional branding, and that its relocation would represent a significant loss to the town's identity and brand equity. 3. Directs the CEO to prepare and submit a nomination for the arch to be included on the State Register of Heritage Places based on its recognised rarity, unique position as a civic gateway, and social significance. 4. Instructs the CEO to investigate and pursue all available funding opportunities for the long-term structural restoration and preservation of the arch in its current location, including but not limited to federal and state heritage, tourism, and iconic infrastructure grants. 5. Directs the Shire President and CEO to seek a formal meeting with the Minister for Transport and the Minister for Heritage to discuss a state government partnership for the structure's long-term preservation, specifically seeking a waiver or state contribution for mandated traffic management costs and direct funding for preservation works. 6. Directs the Shire President and CEO to seek meetings with the relevant federal ministers and local member to advocate for federal investment in the restoration of the arch as a monument of national industry significance. And finally, 7, requests a progress report on these advocacy and funding efforts to be presented to Council at the September 2026 ordinary meeting.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor De Campo. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. For those who've been following along at home, I think my feelings on this matter are now quite well documented. Firstly, I have to commend the officers, as always. The staff here have done a great job and looking at the technical options for preserving what is essentially, technically, a bridge. However, I believe the solution to the problem isn't necessarily a technical solution, it's a political one. Now, there's lots of things that Australia is supposedly built on the back of. These days it's iron ore, previously it was wool. But the timber industry, for the early days of our fledgling nation, was vital. Timber exported from this part of the world obviously didn't pass under the arch until 1958, but it passed along that street and it was exported all over the world. Streets and buildings in London, all throughout Europe, have Southwest Jarrah supporting their roofs. It's a big deal. It is a big deal. And I think we as a people are guilty of not preserving and maintaining and protecting our heritage as best we should. Now, the arch was controversial from the start. It was put up in '58, despite not having planning permission for it. I think that's something that should be celebrated. Now, I'm not certainly suggesting that council now ignores our own rules and, celebrates the pirate, but to celebrate and maintain and preserve that heritage, that fighting spirit, that just because something's difficult, we don't bother doing it. Now, I understand traffic management costs are the issue here, and they're always going to be because it's over a state road. The actual maintenance of the arch is not particularly expensive, but what I'm suggesting is that it's been sitting there as the northern entrance gateway to our town for 60-something years now, and it's not been given the importance or the recognition that it truly deserves. What I'm asking for council's support is to provide our CEO and Shire President the opportunity to go and fight that fight at the state and federal levels. I understand it's been done before and it wasn't successful, but let's try again. Before we resign to the fact that we have to move what is an internationally recognized Manjimup landmark to another location, where it will be easier to preserve, it will be easier to go and look at, but it won't be quite the same. So that's why I highly commend you to support this, because it doesn't tie us to keeping it there forever if we can't get the funding. What I'm asking is let's recognize the significance of it and take the fight to the relevant state and federal people and say that this is something that's worth preserving. We keep hearing about how the state of WA is so financially successful and how we have multi-billion-dollar surpluses. Well, let's spend a little bit of that, or let's fight for a little bit of that to be invested in protecting what is an incredibly rare and unique landmark anywhere in Australia. And it's right here in Manjimup, and it's worth protecting. Thank you.
Councillor De Campo.
Yes, Madam President, thank you. And I'd like to speak against the motion and open the door to do that so that I could use a lot of the ammo that I was going to use in the recommendation the staff proceeded with. The reality is, in Councillor Burns's very public expose of the arch and wanting to keep the arch, there were about 20 people that commented on whether the arch should go or should stay. The history of the arch is pretty interesting, and you're right, it was illegally built originally. That arch has been knocked off its perches, by the way, and I think there was, in some of your AI content, I did see Councillor Burns where it did say that Rotary had replaced the post. Well, that was because it was too low initially, and Brian Wilson, God rest his soul, actually knocked it off with an excavator, and Mark Drono did the job at the other end, and those posts are, I think, still sitting in his yard out towards Dean Mill. Brian Wilson knocked it off, and that's why those posts were put back there. They would only be 20, maybe 30 years old, so much younger than the gantry section of the arch. The arch is classified as a bridge. And I think in telling people the cost of upgrading a bridge, for argument's sakes, and I had some discussion with Councillor Moylan, I think, about potentially using the bridge fund, to be able to maintain the arch in the future. Well, I am no way endorsing a bridge fund being used for an arch when I can take you to 7 culverts without even looking that there's holes in the roads that we haven't replaced the culvert. The reality is, though, if we preserve the arch and we move the arch, it then becomes a static display that people can actually appreciate. We can then encourage people to stop rather than driving under the arch. And I think in this room, I would probably have gone under the arch more than anybody else. In fact, I did some quick calculations. It's about 10,000 times in my lifetime so far. And I very, very rarely ever see anyone stopped at the arch taking photos because it's iconic. If you look at the other iconic things that have been moved off of highways, I did a slight AI search, very easy to do nowadays. There's the big merino, the big galah, just move a few out of this room and we'd be right there. The big pineapple, the big kangaroo. So things do get moved, and they've now become static displays and very, very successful tourist icons in those regions. And if you say things change, so things change over time, and I think I'll let the cost, because she does it so well, I'll let the cost discussion fall to my esteemed colleague to my right. But if you talk about things that change, well, the 12 apostles are now 8, and yet people still go and have a look at them. There was a building, in fact, where Elizabeth Quay, and I only knew it as Winnie's Chinese restaurant, actually, but there was a building there, and it was, in fact, it was the Rotunda. It was the Barrack Street Jetty Rotunda. Beautiful building. It was heritage listed. And as a part of Elizabeth Quay, they moved that building to another location that it was more prominent and better used and clearly not underwater. So you can move things and make them more prominent. Now, I don't know if any of you have gone and had a visual inspection of the arch. I see it every day, sometimes twice or sometimes 4 times a day at the moment. It is a disgrace. If that's what we want as our entrance to town in its current condition, and this motion doesn't do anything about that. This motion doesn't improve its condition. It has changed in the very visual nature, because at the last time we went through this process, and I think our current Director of Infrastructure Services was in the team then, we had to put steel straps over it to tie it down and various other things. It's white ant riddled, and there was a white ant treatment 2 years ago. There is a cost to that. That should be done each year, most likely. That arch screams unkept, dishevelled, and a town that isn't putting value in the very timber industry you're talking about. And you're right, every crossing, that's what this was developed. These towns were developed. State sawmills, they were all state sawmills. Pemmican was state sawmill number 7, I think. Could be stand to be corrected if anyone's in the room. If Keith Lidlow was here, he'd be able to correct me. Ray Kiro for sure, he's probably watching. He's been trying to ring me. I've got to ring him back, Ray. I'll ring you tomorrow, Ray. But the reality is every crossing in the UK, up until they closed that mill, in fact, came from this area. So every train line in the UK sits on a Western Australian carry crossing. But that's the past. And we need to significantly ensure that the heritage of that stays. There is nothing stopping Main Roads, with the condition of that arch as it is, coming to us later this year and saying, we require you to remove the arch because you haven't maintained bridge number 8033. And that's where the argument on Facebook really didn't get enough factual substance to it. It is technically classified as a bridge. It is a bridge. It crosses a highway. That's without the impediments it puts on heavy transport because of the height and width restrictions that it imposes by the very nature of being over the highway. So I foreshadow the officer's recommendation. I urge you to vote this recommendation down and have a clear direction on what we want our community to look like, where we would like that arch, preserving it. And when we do preserve it, we can put plaques of 100-year Rotarians or Rotarians of significance around it. We can tell stories around the timber industry itself. We can have holograms. We can have whatever you like. We could have a audible experience telling about the crossings in the UK coming from Pemberton or state sawmills actually developing the area. But without moving it, we can't do any of that. It stays a static display on a highway that people just pass under and actually take no notice of. I urge you to vote the motion down.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for?
I'll speak for the motion. I can see this arch being memorable in either the current location or in a new location, and I've got some good spots to where it might like to go in the new location too, if that's what ends up happening. However, if I had if I had my choice and there was no money involved, do we want the arch there in good condition and people travelling under it, or do I want it shifted into another position? My preference would be for it to stay where it is. So that's my first starting point. Let's have the arch where it is. Now, I know we've got some other information which I'm not totally clear about the rules about what we've been instructed to do with that arch, but I agree totally with Councillor Burns. These things are all political. It's a political decision in the end. And what he's suggesting is we advocate strongly and show our community. And I've spoken to many people about this, not on Facebook, by the way, don't really do that. But, and there are mixed opinions. When you tell them the price, they go, shift it. Yeah. And then when you tell them the price of shifting it, they go, leave it there. You know? So that's a bit of a dilemma. And I know there's a long-term sort of maintenance type thing with it. But, you know, at the moment, and I noticed in the officer's report, they have some costings on the options 1, 2, but there's no costing on option 3, which is to shift it. But I have heard in reports that it's about $500,000 to shift it. So I think that Councillor Burns is on the right track here to let's make sure we advocate strongly to get someone else to contribute to keeping the bridge where it is because of all of the historical reasons he said, because of what people who visit Manjimup remember. And as he said, if we're unsuccessful in those attempts, genuine attempts to do that, genuine attempts to try and do it, then we look at other options because it is an icon and we do need to preserve it one way or the other. But I think Councillor Burns's motion has a lot of merit. Thank you.
Can I have a question?
Question?
Have we had any, I think we did at a previous meeting ask for a genuine attempt to be made for a co-contribution from Main Roads from memory. Have we had any information back on that? Genuine attempt to ask for any co-contribution?
Madam President, I might refer to our Director of Infrastructure Services to provide a quick update on funding possibilities.
Thank you. There has been no formal contact made with Main Roads for a contribution, as we didn't know the outcome of the council tonight, and that will come in the future. Main Roads have suggested they would support us in a co-funding application to state and federal governments. We have that in writing. Yeah.
Can I just clarify that? To revert a co-contribution
To potentially upgrade and strengthen the structure.
Yeah, sure. Councillor Bating.
I'd just like to support Andy's motion.
Councillor Burns.
Sorry, Councillor Burns. I think just this afternoon, Nannup is looking for an entrance statement to their town, and I thought, there we are, taking ours down. There is, up in Carnamah, they've spent more than $750,000 building a tractor. And these things are created by arguments the town has got together, they've got to have some sort of statement. We already have it, and it's just going to cost us $30,000 to keep it there if we can get around the traffic management. So, like, I know this is a financial thing, but if it was just a financial decision, the council wouldn't be involved. It's an emotional decision, and it's a cultural heritage tourism, and it's a huge tourism thing which no one's mentioned. We've already got the icon, and it's actually not going to cost us that much to keep it. So I think we need to, I support Councillor Burns' motion.
Thank you, Councillor Batink. Any other speakers? Councillor Darren.
I agree with everything Councillor Burns said. It is an icon. It means different things to different people. For some people, it's a link back to the timber industry. For my family, it's home. We drive through. I don't have a connection to Manjimup for well, okay, maybe that's wrong, maybe I'm getting close to a couple of decades, but not multi-generational decades. I don't have a connection to the timber industry beyond that. I live in this town and I work with people, or I've lived with people that do. But that arch does mean coming home to my kids and to my family. I certainly would like to see, if it was moved, that it still maintains that it is still a prominent place in our community, that it still is that sense of coming home. It still has that connection for people who did have family in the timber industry, that it still has that nostalgia for people that have left, that still remember the timber arch as home, and they can still have that connection. So I do believe it needs to have a very prominent place as you enter Manjimup. The issue for me, and I am going to challenge you, sorry, Councillor Patink, it's not $30,000. It's not a little bit of money. So in 2019-2020, that whole intersection was redone. To put those nice little metal straps across the top, $35,000 is what it cost to get all of that done at the time. The termite inspection that Councillor De Campo mentioned, $400 to do that, $2,000 to do the traffic management. That was 5 times the cost of the work. We now have a $35,000 quote to do the painting and a $230,000 quote to do the traffic management. Main Roads is not going to give us an exemption. They aren't, they can't. The risk of them going against their own policies to give us an exemption, what happens if an accident happens and somebody sues the state government or the registered person on that road and they say, you had the policy and you exempted them and now somebody is injured or dead. There is no, you've been in here, we talked about it at the last briefing session about the tendency of public servants, of which I was one, and I still have that tendency within me, to be very risk averse. Main Roads is not going to give us an exemption. Now, maybe they partner with us for an application for funding, but how often do we get that funding? Because then there is $2,000 to do the termite inspection, the $230,000 to do the painting of it. What happens when the next time termites are in there, we find that it's structurally unsound? There is currently, so when those works got done in 2019-2020, that $35,000 for the strapping, that was temporary works that Main Roads allowed us to do on that bridge on the condition that eventually we would have to do additional works to secure it. We then held off and said, fine, that's right, you go and work that out, you come back and you tell us what you want, and we hoped that would hold them off for a while. And it did, it held them off for 5 years. And then they came back with their concepts. Their wording is to design properly, just to do the designs for the concept that they have suggested is $500,000 to do the designs, not to do the work. In the next decade, just to do the painting, a few more termite inspections, and the design work, on top of which we will then have to do the works to keep it where it is, we are looking at $1 million, $1.5 million to keep that arch where it is. I cannot stand in front of our constituents and tell them that we are going to spend $1 to $1.5 million in the next decade to keep that arch where it is, when we can maintain the heritage, we can protect the heritage, we can elevate this icon as a tourist attraction and as a permanent piece of our history in a prominent location. We can do that. We can do the maintenance for cheaper. We don't have to worry about the traffic management. We can check it more often because we actually have the ability to not have to contract Main Roads contractors to do the traffic management. We can just send people out there to check and have a look at it. That protects it, and then we can use the money to fix up the roads, to fix up the footpaths. I have spoken to a lot of people about this, and look, in fairness, I have spoken to a lot of young people about this. They don't necessarily have the strong connection to the history that a lot of other people do, and I do recognise that. But when I spoke to those people about it, they said, no, we do not want you to spend the money on that. Sure, we want to keep the icon. We want to elevate it. We want it to be an important part. But I don't want to have to leave home half an hour early every single morning to get to my job because I'm worried about the road that I drive on and that I'm going to have an accident. So I have to drive at 80 k's an hour on Graphite Road to get into town. I don't want my kids to have to walk to school or ride to school and worry that they're going to trip over the footpath. There's older people that don't want to have to stay in their homes because there is no accessible way for them to get into town. That is where they want us to spend the money when they are looking at these levels of costs. We can have both. The reality is to put it on the state register is a minimum 2 years. That's based on the general consensus of just the timeframes this would take. But the Heritage Council came and presented in here in June 2025 and said they have a backlog so long that they are only assessing 3 to 5 a year and that we are looking at 10 years before an application is assessed to have something put on the state register. I understand what people are saying, but we have gone through this process. And I'm not willing to spend $1 to $1.5 million in the next decade to keep this where it is. When we have an option to move it, yes, it's going to cost money, but then it's done. And we don't kick this can down the road and we don't continue making this a decision of a future council because we are not willing to make the hard decision today.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilcox? You're the only one that hasn't spoken. I'm just offering that right now. Okay. I am going to speak against Councillor Burns' proposition. Tonight we've made some really tough decisions and we didn't back some of the people within our community that are really struggling because we need to be financially responsible. We can sit here and say, yep, let's spend the $250,000, $230,000, let's paint the arch, let's get it looking all smicko for what could be a very short period of time. Because do you know what? In 4 years, we might not be sitting around this table and it might not be our problem. But do you know what? It's going to be our kids' problem and it's going to be our ratepayers' problem. So I really think we need to look at this as being financially responsible and making sure that we are sustainable in the decisions that we make. And I back Councillor De Campo and what he said in the previous item, that yep, we do need to look at what we are spending our money on. And I'm not sure whether this is a sustainable and long-term decision that we can make to keep the arch where it is. We are often asked for a big thing. We were going to paint the water tower up at Imperials as a Vegemite container so that we had an Insta-worthy icon. Glad we didn't do that because Vegemite's not owned by an Australian company anymore, so I'm really glad we didn't do that. We have an Insta-worthy icon, but does it need to be where it is? Is it the same icon if we move it? And if we really have a good think about where we move it, it could be even better. Someone said to me the stop, save, spend. So if we have this icon somewhere where people stop and take a photo rather than just drive through that arch, what could that bring to our town? We need to look at this in a broader spectrum than just it's the arch. I understand that you're coming home when you go through that arch, but are you not coming home if you see it and it's just off to the right? Do you have to go under the arch to be home? If it's just there, are you still home? Because home isn't where it is, it's the people that make it home. It's not the things that make it a home, it's the people that make it a home. So I think it doesn't matter where we have the arch, it's the people in our town that make it a home, not an arch. I would like to say in closing, we have caned traffic management throughout this entire conversation. We fully understand that the requirements that the state have put onto our traffic management agencies have been requirements of the state. They are not what our traffic management agencies are putting onto our community. We are 100% back in keeping those people safe in the jobs that they are doing because they want to go home too. So I just want to make it very clear that although we are questioning the amount of the traffic management, we are certainly not questioning the requirements that are needed to keep those people safe. I know that that has, sort of deviated from the arch, but I think that's something really important that we need to get across. Although we don't agree with the amount, we do agree with what those people are trying to do. I would ask you to not support Councillor Byrne's proposal, and that we then go back to the officer's recommendation. Councillor Byrne, seeing everyone else has had a chat, would you like to close?
Thank you very much. It's been interesting. Just to address a couple of the issues, there was nothing in my alternate motion that tied the Shire to paying for all of this ourselves. The core spirit of that motion is essentially to say that this is worth preserving, but it's a job that's bigger than should realistically fall to local government. Because I'm certainly not of the personal opinion that a quick $30,000 paint job and some traffic management is sufficient. I do believe we should be looking at these long-term structural, I forget the technical word, restoration. To address some of the other issues, I've been sitting here struggling to remember the name of the old sailing ship that's just outside Albany. Amity, thank you. Do you happen to know how old it is? No? It's a very old ship. It's been there a very long time. In the UK, there is one that sits in my original hometown in Glasgow that is hundreds of years old. And it's a fantastic thing to walk on and feel like you're walking on history, except for you're not, because over time, every single bit of it has been replaced by deterioration of the wood. So I completely understand that the structure that's there is not technically the same one that was built in 1958, but the spirit of it is. And I do believe, and this is just my opinion, that moving it is different to replacing little bits of it each time. I know we keep talking about how it's a bridge, and I understand that technically it is a bridge, but technically a tomato is a fruit, but we all treat it as a vegetable because at some point somebody made a decision that is a vegetable. Science says it's a fruit. I don't think the average person in the street would call it a bridge, even though technically it is. But does it really matter that we're haggling over it? I'm certainly not suggesting that we pull money out of our bridge fund to support bridges that actually physically support people and vehicles. I'm saying we need to make some noise and try and have this icon of Manjimup recognised for the importance that it has, not just for our community, but for the state as a whole. There are a lot of icons throughout the state that receive support and state government funding. Ours isn't one of them. That's what I'm pushing, that we deserve that same level of recognition from the state with access to that support that some of these other areas are getting. But conscious of the fact that time is of the essence, the deterioration continues, the termites continue to eat, there is a bit of a tight time frame on here. I've asked for a report back in September because it should still be the decision of the people that sit around this table. I'm certainly not suggesting we kick this down the road for the next, or after the next election or the one after. I want us to be the ones that make the decision. I just want to give our staff and Shire President an opportunity to kick up a bit of noise first, before we accept defeat and put it somewhere else. So for those of you who plan to vote against, I urge you to reconsider, and for those that plan to vote in favour, I thank you. Thanks.
Okay, councillors, can we please put the proposed alternative motion, or the alternative motion from councillor Burns to the vote? All those in favour? And against? Carried 4-3. Thank you. Okay. Got through it. Okay. Item 10, late reports, there are nil. Item 11, question from members. 11.1, response to questions from members taken on notice, there are nil. 11.2, questions from members? Nil. 12, motions for consideration at the following meeting? Nil. 13, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting, there is nil. Applications for leave of absence? None. With that, I thank you all for coming and wish to close the meeting at 7:25. Thank you very much.